It wasn't until my dog started puking up black sludge that I realized something was seriously off with my rainwater tank. At first, I figured it was just a clogged filter or maybe a random algae spike from the heat wave the week before. But when I twisted off the inspection cap, a wave of burnt motor oil stench slammed into me so hard I almost keeled over. My eco-friendly rainwater setup, my pride and joy, was now a swirling mess of thick, toxic gunk. Before I could even wrap my head around it, I pulled up my security footage. There she was, Karen, creeping into my yard in the middle of the day, hauling 2 5-gallon jugs like she was on some covert op. She pried open the lid of my main collection barrel, gave a quick glance around, and dumped every last drop inside before strolling off like she hadn't just poisoned my whole water supply. She even stared straight into my camera, flipped at the bird, and smirked. That's when I knew she wasn't just a petty nuisance. She was dangerous. My name's Ethan, and I live in a modest, self-sufficient house on the edge of a decent neighborhood in Pine Ridge. Unfortunately, it's also home to one of the most overbearing homeowners associations around. I built this rainwater system from scratch: underground tanks, solar-powered UV filters, and custom pipes that send extra runoff to my native plant garden. It's not just a hobby. My dogs drink from it, my veggies thrive on it, and last year during the drought, neighbors even stopped by with jugs to fill up. Everyone knew it worked, everyone except Karen. As HOA president, she's had it in for me and anyone who doesn't match her cookie-cutter vision of beige fences, manicured shrubs, and zero personality. She fined Mrs. Carter for her wind chimes, saying they upset her cat's emotional harmony. She ordered Mr. Davis, a Vietnam vet, to take down his American flag on Veterans Day because it didn't match the neighborhood's color scheme. My sin: rain barrels and solar panels. I dared to live sustainably in her little empire of sameness, and now I was paying the price. I stood there, dumbfounded, watching that smirk replay on my footage. This wasn't just vandalism or some petty prank. She'd deliberately poured toxic waste into my water system. That's sabotage. That's poison. The more I thought about it, the madder I got. This wasn't your typical HOA drama. This was a crime. But instead of losing it, I grinned. What Karen didn't know, what she couldn't have guessed, is that I'm not just some guy with a green streak. I'm a certified environmental systems engineer with a decade at state disaster relief and 5 years working on water safety projects with the EPA. I design setups like this for a living, and I document everything. I siphoned off the top layer of sludge, collecting samples in lab-grade containers, sealing them up, and stashing them in my cold box. I knew what to test for: hydrocarbons, metal traces, synthetic additives, anything to nail down the oil type, maybe even its brand. But first, I needed to figure out if this was a one-off or if Karen was on some kind of toxic rampage. I asked around quietly. Lisa said her koi pond turned into a black muck pit overnight. Mr. Hayes mentioned his pressure washer spitting out brown water from his tank. Something told me Karen was targeting more than just me. She was after anyone with water storage that didn't come from the city. At the next HOA meeting, there she was in her pastel cardigan, passing out flyers about approved exterior decor, with that fake smile, shooting me a glare like I'd crossed her. I kept my mouth shut, gathering more intel. I wanted to know where she got the oil, if she was working solo, and whether she'd tainted the protected runoff stream 2 miles south of us that feeds into a state wetland. If her sludge had reached there, this wasn't just petty revenge, it was a federal offense. Karen was about to go from HOA dictator to EPA target. I added 2 more hidden cameras, upgraded my motion sensors, reviewed my permits, and calculated the volume of water she'd ruined. I traced the overflow pipes, took samples from the drainage ditch near her place, and spotted black streaks along the curb where a slow leak had seeped out. Every piece of evidence tightened my case. I swung by Autotech to grab some filters and casually asked about their used oil disposal. A clerk said a woman matching Karen's description had bought 2 5-gallon jugs of synthetic motor oil 3 days earlier, paying cash. They had cameras. I got a time-stamped receipt photo. By the end of the week, I had water samples, oil residue pics, timestamps, witness accounts, and video proof, a dossier hefty enough for a courtroom. I called my old EPA boss, Tom. Remember when you told me to call if I caught someone dumping oil into a runoff system? I said, I've got a case for you. Bring a camera. Tom sent a field team by Friday. I wanted felony charges to stick. Karen kept strutting around Pine Ridge, handing out notices about aesthetic standards, hassling Mrs. Carter over a purple mailbox, and posting flyers warning about unauthorized water collection as mosquito hazards, aimed squarely at me. She had no clue an environmental investigation was about to crash down on her. I ran a chemical analysis on the tainted water, hydrocarbons, zinc, phosphates, and a synthetic additive unique to 2 oil brands, matching what she'd bought at Autotech. The timeline fit perfectly. She bought the oil, waited a day, then dumped it. I mapped the affected homes. Most were near her property or HOA sheds. I figured she had a stash somewhere. I tweaked my cameras and caught her loading her trunk with jugs, driving to a self-storage place. She went into a unit, stayed 20 minutes, and left with an empty trunk. She was hoarding used oil like a pro. The EPA team showed up, disguised as utility workers. I handed over my evidence: maps, footage, samples, timestamps. They tested my tanks, garden soil, drainage grates, and the protected stream. Contamination levels in the runoff were so bad, Tom muttered. She's going to need a legal dream team and a prayer. As Karen prepped for the HOA's spring cleanup tour, the EPA crew rolled in with a warrant. She tried her sugary voice. "Gentlemen, I didn't know we had an inspection." Tom flashed his badge. "Environmental Protection Agency, ma'am. We're investigating illegal dumping. We need access to HOA property, sheds, and 6 months of meeting notes." Her mask slipped. Fear or fury, I couldn't tell. She sputtered, "This is absurd. There's no dumping." The agents found 5-gallon drums in the sheds, some marked Drain Vas Store, Karen T. She yelled, "This is a frame job." Nobody bought it. The EPA issued an investigation notice and prepped felony charges. I dug deeper, suspecting she wasn't solo. She hit the storage unit again, and my camera caught her with a clipboard, checking off lists, logistics, not random spills. I gave the footage to Tom, who said, "This is organized. If she's moving product across residential zones, it could jump to environmental trafficking." I requested HOA records and found payments to Clean Route Solutions for oil disposal. Weird for a suburb. I called their number. A gruff voice said, "We don't do neighborhoods," and hung up when I mentioned Karen. The EPA confirmed Clean Route had a rap sheet for shady waste handling. Karen had been dealing with them. As the tide turned, Karen claimed medical leave from HOA duties. Her VP, Sarah, called the investigation a witch hunt at a board meeting. I handed the chair the EPA's initial report. Sarah blanched. The EPA dug into Karen's finances, finding laundered HOA funds via fake contracts to cover illegal oil disposals. Her ex-husband came forward, saying she'd dumped oil on his lawn after their divorce as payback. He had photos and notes matching her clipboard, listing Ethan's barrels as a target. The EPA raided her house, finding bins, gloves, funnels, and labeled oil boxes in her garage. A full-on operation. Karen was tracked down at a cousin's place 2 counties away, charged with felony illegal dumping, misuse of HOA funds, conspiracy, and endangering a protected waterway. At trial, her defense claimed she was framed by eco-fanatics. The prosecution played the dumping video, presented my evidence, and called her ex, who laid out her revenge pattern. I testified, breaking down the science, how oil wrecks systems, the runoff's wetland impact, and the oil's chemical fingerprint. The jury took under an hour, guilty on all counts. Karen got 18 months of supervised probation, mandatory hazardous waste cleanup service, restitution to affected residents, and a lifetime HOA ban. She left court a broken woman. The local paper ran, "HOA Prez faces felony rap for oil dumping plot." Pine Ridge breathed easier. The HOA scrubbed her name from its books, held a new election, and folks pushed me to run. I agreed, but only with transparency rules and green living support. Rain barrels and solar panels got the green light. I rebuilt my system with tamper-proof lids and smart sensors, neighbors pitching in with supplies. I added a plaque. This system nearly fell to ignorance and spite. Now it's a testament to resilience, truth, and clean water. May we never forget one person's mess or our strength together. Dedicated to Karen T. Thanks for the spark. Neighbors loved it. Karen, now in an orange vest picking up roadside trash, faded into memory. Pine Ridge bloomed, freer, greener, together.